It's complicated. In early July of 2020, I was still grieving the loss of my beloved Nancy and trying to learn how to live by myself with just a cat in the house. I had thrown myself into my work as judge of Daugherty State Court, trying to get the court back to some semblance of normalcy and to catch up on the backlog of cases which had to be continued because of the courthouse being shut down by COVID. I walked over to the county employee health clinic to get some prescriptions refilled and asked the PA to check on my ears. She told me there was a lump behind my right ear. I felt, and sure enough, there was a noticeable lump, though I don't think I would have noticed if she had not pointed it out to me. The next day, I was at my doctor's office for blood work, which proved inconclusive. They then sent me for a CT scan and an appointment with Dr. Chris Mann, a local ENT doctor who performed a biopsy. The first week of August, Dr. Mann called to tell me that the mass in my right parotid gland, a salivary gland that wraps around your ear, was some type of malignant carcinoma. The pathology department at Vanderbilt University Hospital, a place about which I had some firsthand knowledge, could not really characterize the mass more specifically than some type of malignant cancer. More tests were run which ruled out some types of cancer, but nothing was definitively determined about what it was other than a malignant carcinoma. At first, I was very zen about my diagnosis. I really did not care at that point if I didn't have long to live because I knew there was a better life waiting, and honestly, I was hoping I would get back to my beloved Nancy sooner rather than later. I saw Dr. J. McAfee, a radiation oncologist at Phoebe Cancer Center, who sent me for a full-body PET scan before he would even tell me whether it was even worth trying any type of treatment. The results showed the cancer was limited to my right parotid gland, so he set me up with an ENT surgeon he knew at Shands Hospital in Gainesville, Florida. At some point, I started to think this might be beatable, and I needed to try to beat it. I had adult sons who had just lost their mother, and countless friends who I knew were praying for me to beat this. I started to somewhat stress out over what I could do to survive this ordeal when one Sunday here at church in this sanctuary, I started staring at the stained glass window behind the altar of Jesus praying in the garden before his horrible ordeal. I started repeating to myself, "Not my will, Lord, but thine." Suddenly the stress left me and I became at peace with whatever I had to face. I had surgery at Shands on September 17, 2020 to remove the malignancy. My brother-in-law, Dr. Bruce Smith, took me. During the pre-op visit with the surgeon, he whipped out a photograph of Clark Gable and asked Dr. Silver if she could make me look like him. Without missing a beat, she said, "Dr. Smith, I'm a surgeon, not a miracle worker." After a 5-hour surgery, in which she removed several lymph nodes down my neck, I finally roused looking a bit like Frankenstein's monster. But by 11 o'clock the next morning, I was walking to Bruce's truck for the 3-hour ride home. Dr. Silver told me that the lymph nodes were negative for cancer and she had successfully removed the malignancy in my parotid gland. However, I had stumped the pathology department at the University of Florida as they could not characterize the mass any more specifically than it was a malignant carcinoma of some type. So I tell everyone that I got alien cancer from the last time I was abducted. I told them not to put that probe in my ear. After recovering from the surgery, I started 6.5 weeks of daily radiation treatments at Phoebe with Dr. McAfee. He was so accommodating to allow me to come in late every afternoon so I could continue to work each day. The radiation in my neck destroyed my sense of taste, so I ended up losing 25 pounds. Now, mind you, I needed to lose the weight, but it's not a weight loss plan I would recommend to anyone. But I survived, still staring at that stained glass window behind the altar saying, "Not my will, Lord, but thine." After 6.5 weeks of daily radiation, they really thought I had been cured, and I got to ring the bell at the oncology radiation department. In August of 2021, they scheduled me for another CT scan since it had been a year from my diagnosis. I will never forget the look of anguish on Dr. McAfee's face when he told me there was evidence of small tumors in both lobes of my lungs. "Not my will, Lord, but thine." After 2 biopsies, I was told it was apparently the same type of uncharacterized malignant carcinoma as had popped up behind my right ear. I was scheduled for 12 chemotherapy treatments with Dr. Johnny, a brilliant medical oncologist at the Phoebe Cancer Center. Further testing showed a newer immunotherapy agent, Keytruda, might help. On November 1, 2021, I started a series of chemotherapy and Keytruda infusions, 2 Mondays on and 1 off. I continued to work, though I did tire more easily at the end of the day. Not my will, Lord, but thine. After the 11th treatment, my white blood cell count had dropped too low to get the 12th treatment. I had to have injections for 3 days to try to get my white blood cell count back up into a safe range, and the 12th treatment was rescheduled. In the meantime, I had another CT scan scheduled. The results of that scan showed there was no evidence of any tumors in my lungs. I never had that 12th chemotherapy treatment. Dr. Johnny has continued me on Keytruda infusions every 3 weeks, which I have been able to tolerate with no issues. I go in at 8 a.m. and am usually done by 10 to 10:30 and go home and change clothes and go to work. I have had a 1.5 years worth of negative CT scans every 3 months. I have another PET scan scheduled for late October, which, if it too is negative, will likely result in Dr. Johnny discontinuing the Keytruda infusions every 3 weeks. Not my will, Lord, but thine. If that holds true, I think I can safely say I've beaten cancer twice in 3 years. Dr. Johnny recently confessed to me that he had no idea if the Keytruda would have any effect on the type of cancer I had, as studies showed success with breast cancers and some cancers that originate in the lungs. He told me most folks with head and neck cancers usually end up at hospice at this point. Not my will, Lord, but thine. I don't think I could have survived this journey without the love and support of my sons, my family, and my friends, including my friends here at First Methodist. But most of all, I attribute my successful outcome and blessings to what that stained glass window represents, the healing power of Jesus. Not my will, Lord, but thine.